They know the law, they refuse to move, they refuse to pay the rent.
I have no problem.
Well, I don't know why you think this is funny. You're not paying rent.
Try and imagine if you were this woman's landlord.
You think this is funny? She's laughing.
For almost a year and a half, Teodora Garcia's family has lived on one floor of this 3-story multi-family house on Chestnut Street absolutely free. She hasn't paid a dime in rent. None of the tenants in this building have paid a dime to the owner, ever.
Hello?
I get fined by the city, I have no rights.
Nobody's home.
We traveled to Brooklyn, New York, and we found yet another reason why investing in the Big Apple may be a big mistake. Of course, we get the cops called on us.
Hey, guys.
What's going on?
Hi, my name is Wayne.
Officer Lee.
Dolcefino. Hey, Officer Lee. How you doing, man?
How can I help you?
I'm from Texas.
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 The state Texas.
The lovely state of Texas.
Okay.
The headlines this spring made Texas landlords seem kind of mean compared to their landlord buddies in the Big Apple.
New York City's population is more than 3 times Houston's. Houston landlords filed 3 times more evictions than filed in New York City.
6,500 evictions in Houston in a single month. We all see the stories of hardship on the local news, and we can sympathize with folks who got down on their luck, especially during COVID times. But Brian Swearing represents landlords, and he sees the games played by tenants who simply don't want to pay up the rent. Freeloaders. Texas courts don't play games with freeloaders.
It's more along the lines of they're gaming the system. You're looking at being in front of a judge in roughly 2 weeks after you file an eviction and begin the eviction process, roughly 2 weeks.
A few months to get the tenant out, because the time and money it takes to get rid of bad tenants who simply refuse to pay the rent in New York is simply ridiculous.
If not a year at times, it's very close to a year. And sometimes it can be over that.
No, there's no excuse for someone to sit for a year in a landlord-tenant situation. That is an over-the-top, unnecessary due process, not needed.
They are calling it housing court hell. Delays and backups in New York City are turning into nightmares for some families who say they are on the brink of bankruptcy.
ABC 7 in New York told you about the nurse who was trying to make ends meet by renting her upstairs apartment. The tenant hadn't paid rent for 2 years.
She had to wait for more than a year after winning her case for a judge to sign off on the eviction warrant.
And now we bring you to Chestnut Street in Brooklyn, the latest symbol of what's very wrong here.
Never in my life, this is insane.
Houston investor Avi Ron bought this property out of foreclosure in September of 2023, but he hasn't been able to collect a single penny in rent. The tenants have ignored his efforts to even identify their names. Notices of eviction were sent May of last year. An eviction lawsuit filed 11 months ago. Since then, Ron's contractors have been repeatedly scared off by the tenants when they try to gain access to inspect the property.
And I have no access for the property, and these people are freeloaders or living for free. Something has to change.
So Ron asked Dolcefino Media to go to New York to pay our own visit, to investigate this housing nightmare. And when we finally found the tenants,
trying to be nice.
It looked like it was about to get physical.
Yeah, okay, we don't come here to fight. If you want to fight, we can fight.
This guy claims he's lived on the first floor here of this house for 8 years. His name is Julian Arroyo. He says his rent is $1,500 a month. At least it's supposed to be. He's never paid it.
I can, but everybody needs to be in the same page because we are here to fix the problem.
His only proof of identification is a New York ID, often used by illegal immigrants to get bank accounts in the city to pay their bills, like rent. We figured out who lives on the 3rd floor. Melquiades Garcia says his rent is $1,250, but he doesn't pay it. His only ID comes from the Mexican consulate.
Has that guy paid you a dime?
Not one penny.
Our visit to make repairs and inspect the property triggered a confrontation in the street. The cops were called, not by us, but by the squatters who deserved to be evicted but haven't been. The cops came, but they soon left.
And that's all it is. They're here to fix it, change the locks, and they'll provide you guys a key. Other than that, everything else has to go through court.
But it doesn't end there. Then the freeloaders call someone else who tells us he's some kind of expert in renters' rights.
Who's in charge?
Yeah.
I'm in charge.
But you don't have to be a real estate specialist to know how to write a check for rent. We had been authorized to collect the money.
When the landlord requests us for rent, we will pay the rent.
I'm representing the landlord. Do you not understand me?
You have a letter saying you represent
Yes.
the landlord?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's come on.
Well, let me ask you a question.
No, it's not question and answer thing.
The renter who found this all so amusing told us she didn't even know who the landlord was before our visit. But we know that's simply not true. The night before we had knocked on the door, her daughter answered, and she knew who the landlord was.
It's a guy named Ron, I believe.
We really had 3 missions during our visit to Brooklyn.
You guys upstairs?
Find out who was actually living here rent-free.
Don't entertain this conversation.
And after a bunch of silliness, we finally got that. And I was there to watch contractors change the locks on the building so Avi Ron could keep more illegal residents from just moving in rent-free. But I learned something else that day that sounds like it's just unfair to the people who own the property. Officer Lee was on the phone with them.
You can't change the locks and not give them a key, so you do have to provide a key to the tenants that are currently living here, unless landlord-tenant court has been officialized. You can't just kick them out.
That's me doing basically an illegal eviction, and that's really me taking matters into my own hands when the court says and when the law says, you know, if you want to evict someone, you have to go through the judicial process.
You're giving him another access, illegal access to your unit, to the apartment that they don't have rights for. What's the purpose of changing the lock then? What are we doing? Wasting more money on locksmiths?
The city of New York is taking action in this case. But do you know who they're suing? Not the tenants, the landlord. Avi Ron, the guy who's been stiffed to the tune of $100,000 in rent. Last year, the tenants had complained about a lack of heat and hot water in the building. A city inspector came and issued violations. And since November, Ron has been fined hundreds of dollars a day. He's still being fined, even though we were told by the tenants that the heating issue had been fixed. But how can Avi Ron have fixed something broken when the tenants have refused to even let him come in?
If they give you the okay to fix whatever that you guys have to fix, that's fine.
It happened again after the cops left this time. We were refused entry. And in the weeks since we identified the folks illegally living here, Ron's company hasn't gotten a penny in rent. But he did get a water bill because none of the tenants paid him. It's over $34,000.
I don't want to spend any more money. I need the cops to go remove the people that are illegally occupying the place rather than me changing the locks.
We asked the New York Housing Department what they expect Avi Ron to do, why they're punishing him. The Housing Department first told us they would review the case, then pointed us to their website and what they call the ABCs of housing. Look at one of them. Tenants must permit the owner to enter the tenant's apartments to inspect, make repairs, or make improvements. So why aren't New York cops enforcing that law? That's a real estate injustice that must end.
The system beats you. You cannot evict anybody in New York. You have to go to court after court after court. Every hearing takes 3 to 6 to 9 months waiting. You just never get to justice.
It's going against them, meaning I've had clients that had to pay their mortgage using a credit card. I've had clients that, a client that was in retirement that had to come out of retirement to pay her mortgage because the tenant wasn't paying her rent.
No business person is going to keep writing a check for $100 million, $50 million to buy themselves long-term expensive litigation that has people sitting in an apartment, not paying rent, and potentially causing problems to the good people around them.
So the only justice is for the squatters or the people who don't pay.
Hey, Mayor Adams, cracking down on absentee landlords and slumlords, that's fair game. But allowing tenants to cheat the system for years shouldn't be a New York state of mind. It's a state of dysfunction.